it looks all right. You can get like the side profile from.
I mean, if I had a jawline, it'd look a lot better from the side. I'd have to turn this way. Yeah, just like hold it up tight.
You gotta get the beard long.
That's why I've always had a beard.
Yeah?
Yeah, it's like an illusion.
I'm here with this beautiful gentleman, this beautiful bearded gentleman who has almost as much gray hair in his beard as mine.
I didn't have this until the pandemic.
Seriously?
Yeah.
The beard or the gray?
The beard. I'm joking. The gray. I don't even remember the pandemic. No, the gray. I didn't have any gray hair until like 21.
Jeez.
That's all right.
Me and him go back 14 some years.
14, yeah. It would have been back to the Hailstorm Pop Evil days.
Evil, yep.
Yeah.
He goes back with you guys about a year ago when we did a video with In This Moment. And we are not with In This Moment. It may look the same, but it's not the same. You are
Correct.
now with
AWOLNATION on the Phantom 5 tour. And it's been great. And we were in Atlanta last time we did this, but it was at the Coca-Cola Roxy. Okay.
Did we just?
We did.
We did.
Yep. Great minds.
So we're back here in Atlanta. We're at Buckhead Theater now.
We are.
How far in this run are you?
We are 2.5 weeks into just about a 7-week tour.
Okay. How's the run going?
It's been great.
Okay.
It's great. I mean, everybody says tours are great, right? Because, you know, it's just like the general quick answer. But here, the band is absolutely killer players. They're all in other projects. They all play every instrument under the sun. They can all produce. They can all write. They can all sing. And the camaraderie of everybody here, of the team, is just through the roof. Everybody gets along. People are hanging out on days off. Everybody helps everybody out. There's not like that one person or that strip of drama that they wish didn't exist, which is kind of a rarity. So it's great for the musicality of it. The team, we're playing nice venues. We've got nice gear. We're really lucky.
Walk me through what happened after In This Moment you went through to who?
Sure. So In This Moment wrapped with myself back in May of last year.
Okay.
I think the last show was Sonic Temple.
Okay.
Gentleman on stage doing monitors for us. David is who took over from me on that project. And I went out with Death Clock.
Okay.
And so we did some a touring with Death Clock. And then I ended up with Baby Metal last year. We did some stuff in the US, South America, and Asia. And it was incredible.
I was just saying, what was that like? Anything you can say that's not NDA covered?
It's a powerhouse from start to finish. The creativity, the idea, the concept, the girls, the band, everybody is just an A-class performer, A-class mentality. And as fun as it was mixing the metal band and doing work with them, I grew a ton in like world travel, advancing stuff. You know, sometimes I would show up and the desk was not what I needed. We got to Colombia and they didn't have any Waves cards. So I just had to rebuild from scratch on house plugins. So, you know, you really just learn, like, we get the luxury of sometimes mostly in the US, I can call, you know, Sound Image or Claire or Eighth Day or somebody or PRG or, you know, whoever it is. And they can be like, yeah, we'll send you ABC. There, like, that's not always the option. But we still had great shows and everybody it was a powerhouse.
Biggest lesson learned, your biggest takeaway from the Baby Metal run?
Not necessarily an audio lesson, but it showed me in my personal life how much I really desire world travel, how important culture is to me, and how important it is that I really make an effort to keep like creating bucket list countries and cities to go to. On the audio side of it, we were mixing a show every day. There's a PA going up in the air and making it happen, you know? But for me, again, I was going to places I'd never had been to. And even at almost 40 years old, I didn't think I was ever going to go to Malaysia or Jakarta, Indonesia, or even Singapore, and to get there and just explore for even a few hours during the day, like the drive and the want to be more engulfed in culture, like continued to grow. So I think the lesson was more personal, like just keep working hard to do that.
Okay, so Baby Metal. And now, how'd you get connected with AWOLNATION?
A buddy of mine named Will called me back in February last year, and he's like, hey, I have the band AWOL. We need somebody to go out on the direct support run with 311. Are you available? And it happened to be like I came home the day before it started, one day of pre-pro, and then it ended the day before I had to leave again. So it was the perfect like summer filler. Came in, met the guys, did one day of pre-pro out in LA, and then started the tour. But it was a phone call just through another touring buddy.
So you've done a lot of different genres now, from not this to metal to now, we're doing more, I'd say, poppy type stuff.
This is like an alt rock thing.
Is your approach to it the same?
No, I think this is kind of what we were just talking about. We were talking about the opposite EQs.
Yeah.
Having done metal for so long, it's so tight, and there's only so much can happen in so much space of a song, right?
Yeah.
And it all needs to be audible. But with this being a rock and roll band, like my kick drum can breathe a little bit more. It doesn't have to be that 4K attack click triggered sound, The toms we're not doing Pantera toms, which I absolutely love, but this is like rock and roll toms, think like a Foo Fighters or a Green Day record, kind of.
Yeah.
And so I'm able to approach this with more of just a rock and roll mentality. Like we have real guitar cabs on stage. Like, when was the last time you saw that? And they're actually, that's what we're actually using. And we're using Bassman 500 heads and a bass cab. So it's...
Kemper somewhere is like, no!
Yeah. I was like, what do I do with these? But getting to pick microphones and sit there and like work on placement and, not chase what any of those records sound like, but make AWOLNATION sound like AWOLNATION should sound like.
Yeah.
I like the approach of how they get to some of the Pantera sounds and the Foo Fighter sounds and the Green Day, all the greats, right? And I can apply that technique, but that's not necessarily the sound that I need. I needed the sound that the boss wants it to sound like from their record. And so it's been fun to just let everything breathe more in the mix.
Yeah. I feel like there's been a few gigs for you that you've had to like run and gun from the get-go. You haven't had much time for pre-pro or rehearsals. Like, what's your process with that going into because you've got another one coming up to where you're just going to have to hit the ground running with it. How do you...
I have all my panic attacks and anxiety attacks week before, so I just get that out of my system and done with. I'm like, all right, let's fire this machine up.
Got to schedule the panic attacks.
Yeah, I won't sleep the last 4 days. My two biggest things are understanding the tools that I'm using, and that's like half the battle of showing up and just, all right, this is how we're going to attach it. It's going to be a new console that I'm on. I've used it in the past, but I'm back on it again for what you're discussing. Integrating waves with it, making sure the servers are redundant, making sure Cat5 lines are good, making sure it's operational. That's number one. And I take pictures of everything. Even I've plugged this in now 40 times probably. I still have pictures in Dropbox of everything just so I don't forget one thing or I'm like, oh crap, how do I do that? I can just pull it up. I've got all my ring diagrams for all the Cat5. I'm using extra I/O boxes. I have one for Smart. Back here, I have one for Lake, how it all gets set up. It's just knowing how to make it all work in a quick move. And translating that going to Europe, different power, different festivals, fly dates. So I have a whole nother rig that I've created for European stuff that's already over there with the company. So they will be able to recreate it to a T. Then it's the mix part of it. This one, I'm going into a file that exists, and this artist wants the file to remain basically the same. I'll do my moves each day to the room. So really my job in that one is to recreate what was already given to me and keep it consistent, which I have no problem doing. There's no ego of mine out here to say that I wouldn't do that. And I'm looking forward to I will learn something from that show file. And I think that's cool. Instead of being like, oh man, I wish it was mine. Oh, cool. Let me see why you did this, or why do you group that into or why are you using that spatial move on your bus right there? So
I think a lot of this is being proactive instead of reactive with stuff. And how do you plan for unexpected stuff? But it's just tough if you don't know what you don't know with this. So what's your advice to people who are going to be walking into that situation to where they're sort of running gun?
The day one thing, or go for it?
Day one, you're going for it, and you have that could be. You talk about having the panic attacks early, but holy crap.
So here's something else that's important that I think gets overlooked is the mixing part of it is only one portion of it, right? The mix has to be good. It has to translate. People are paying money to come see the show. That's important. For me, the way my brain works, what's also important is what if that flight gets delayed? And so we're flying into show day number 1 in Europe from the US. No pre-pro, no day in a hotel, no shower, off the plane, on the bus to the arena, show 1. So I'm also making sure that the audio company is aware of that. They have full photos of everything. They have the whole rig there. I already have a guy that's going to be on site that knows that show just in case something happens, where they can still like bring up faders and make it happen. So, I'm always trying to think ahead of the game more so than just the mix of when I get there. What about the logistics? What if the bus slows down? What time is the latest we can possibly load this show in? I'm also becoming the production manager of this other one, so that's just the PM brain in me working. But if you're coming into this on day one, always have a backup plan, especially like in this situation when I'm leaving the country. Like, I know I'm going to show up, the rig's going to be built, it's going to be plugged in, and that file is going to be on there. And if I don't walk in until 8 p.m., I should be able to hit unmute and just go, and at least audibly produce something enough for the fans to enjoy the show.
Okay, hypothetically speaking, you walk in there, you hit the file, there's nothing there, you now have to mix with nothing. What do you do?
I mean, yeah, then I'm just going to go from channel 1 to channel 30 and be like, make this sound like a kick drum, make this sound like a snare. Other than effects and processing, like, just make the instruments sound like the instruments. Put the vocal, put some effects on there. And like, it's more important to do a show that way than just to say we can't do it and not show up and do a show because of that. Like, okay. And the band is, this other band is a powerhouse. They're great. The vocalist is fantastic. So really I should be able to, worst case, put everything at 0, high pass and low pass it to start, and like, we'll have a show.
Okay. So you walk up to a gig, everything's done. You got 30 seconds to that first, you have no file, no nothing, get 30 seconds to downbeat. Mm-hmm. What do you do?
Kick drum, guitar, and vocals. Vocals first. The first thing that everybody's going to want to hear is something coming out of that microphone, right? And like, this is advice, I've heard it time and time again. Ideally, what I would do is have my hands on a fader for kick and guitar and that vocal, so at least you're getting some rhythmic noise and stuff. Of course, there's going to be tracks, I would assume, so I would make sure that tracks are probably at like -5. And like, at least there's enough there for people to be like confused for a second, and then I can sneak everything else in, like overheads, rides, other stuff can wait. Like, there's like immediates, and obviously vocal number 1. I'd probably have a little delay just there on it, just to like spice it up a little bit, but I can build off of that. Might be really bad first couple of songs, but it'll get there. But yeah, always vocal, kicking a guitar just for stuff, and then tracks if that's crucial.
I'm sure you've never had a bad gig ever in your life.
Never. All flawless, A+.
A+.
I just lied to you. I have to say that on camera. That was a
What
lie.
is the worst gig you've ever had that you walked into just going, oh no?
So one was many, many years ago when I was with the band Pop Evil, and it wasn't necessarily a bad thing, but we did the Pistons halftime show. And just getting there, playing on top of these seats where they had to lay out like a mini stage, and everything had to go like the back hallways of an arena. You think that's intense, let alone like a basketball stadium where it's just that times more, or a basketball arena. And I just remember being young at the time, and I'd switched over to mixing, and there's broadcast trucks, and there's like just so much that I wasn't aware of or how that it worked. And so I think I was just out of my element, but I knew I was going to grow from it, and just the logistics, sheer logistics of making that work. Because you show up day of, you go in, quick sound check, stop everything, camera blocking. I mean, it's more important what it looks like for the most part than like in person there for audio. And I think it was so much for me to understand of that quick throw and go show style of things. We did it, but it was only a one-man crew. We had a guitar tech that helped that day. So I think just in the load on my plate was so intense that it was just really challenging. All the way to like, when we went to Indonesia and our vehicle got searched for bombs every day. Like every time we'd pull in and out of this 5-star hotel, security would walk around the bottom of it and look. It's very third world in the area that we were. We were told, don't leave this street and that street, and like order everything in for the hotel. So not that it was a disastrous gig, but nerve-wracking situations that you get put in other countries, and it just is what it is.
All right, what are the top 3 things you want for being on tour that you need? Does it even need to be audio related?
Sure. For me, number 1 is starting my morning for me. That's always, I take a shower in the morning. I try to come in early, start my day with the shower. I do a multivitamin. I do like a green shake. I do like an iced coffee, and I like to come in and just like, that's my normalcy from home. Yeah. So that's enough for me in that 30 minutes of the day to like feel like I took care of me, and now I'm ready to go take care of everyone else for the other 17 hours. Yeah. So me time is number 1. Number 2 is communication with home. We have laptops, and we have cell phones, and we have every means of communication: FaceTime, email, texting, phone calls. So I try to talk to my parents, call them Brock, just some sort of, even if it's like, hey, hope you have a good day, talk to you tomorrow. Yeah. There's still that little connection to home. And I think the third thing now is days off, actually being days off. as a PM on this, I try to send all my emails the night of the show before going into a day off. There's going to be times I have to make a phone call, but I used to spend my whole day off advancing and doing the work then and not on the show day because I had other obligations. But days off are important for resting. If you want to go work out, if you want to go for a walk, you need to go to the mall. Like, it's important that every 3 days you take a you day if you can.
It's been so cool to know you for these years, and I've seen I mean, you and I have both had definitely our ups and downs, especially with touring, but I feel like you've kind of found your balance now from touring to home life.
Sure.
Whereas before, it's kind of tough to turn that switch off and go home and just unplug.
Absolutely.
And it's so important, but like, what was that moment that clicked for you that like, oh, this is how I relax?
Sure. I mean, that didn't happen until after the pandemic because I used to tour 230, 40 days a year.
Yeah, you were always going.
Yeah, and
when you weren't, you're like, no.
I mean, yeah, post-tour depression and anxiety is a very real thing.
Yeah.
But then I was living in South Dakota in a small town, so whenever I'd go home, there wasn't much of this industry there. So then I would come home from an 8-week, 12-week, 14-week double run and just be, there's a high from being on the road and being around shows and people and fast pace and 18 hours a day and, 10,000 steps a day. Like, your body's in that routine. It's like an athlete, right? Like, you're trained, that's how you operate. And then to go home where there's no big city, didn't have a ton of friends back, people moved away, it's a small town. I kind of just felt like I was stuck and I wasn't learning, I wasn't growing, there wasn't a lot going on. So that's when I moved to Nashville. And I was like, I need to live in a bigger city. So I started to feel better, but I still had that anxiety after the show, coming home to Nashville. I think that's kind of like in the personal realm of things when I realized like I wanted to find a person and, be true with who I am and what I'm looking for in life. So I think that all started to snowball after the pandemic. We did that tour in 21. By that point, I had met Brock. I had came out to family and to the industry and to the world. And that confidence that he instilled of like having a person and then having our first house and the stability and normalcy of home, I never had that before. This was always home. But I didn't know how to shut this off when I was somewhere else. Yeah. So I just felt completely just hollow. And then as soon as, the next email would come in for like, hey, next tour, then I was stoked to go back out. But it wasn't an unhealthy balance. It just wasn't a good balance. I was still home and had my dog and could see family and whatnot, but I wasn't personally fulfilled like I was with the work life. So yeah, getting a house, finding a partner, being true with myself, being true to the world, that all worked into answering that question of where that kind of ended for me.
One of my favorite things that you said in your last video that we did together was you'd mentioned that the people around you get so used to it and you get used to you might not see the merch person every single day, but they're always there and they're like family. You get caught in this routine. And when they're gone, you feel like something's missing and everything's
Absolutely.
missing. So it's hard to replace that when you come back or to even turn that off. And I've seen some people that they need to get away and they need to go, in the woods for a while, or they just need to kind of have that same support around them. I'll never forget that because that was a very, very good point you mentioned because this just gets so normal.
It's like, even if you're working in an office, right, with 100 cubicles, you may only see 20 of those people that you're friends with, maybe personally friends with 10 of them, maybe even 5. But every day when you walk by that coffee pot and you smell that coffee and then you see, Mike, George, and Ben sitting there and Susan over there and, whoever else over here. And then that there's those same smells and you become so subconsciously attached to it, you don't realize it, that when it's gone or you're away from it, just like the familiarities of seeing it in your own mind, you're building these little connections, let alone living on a tour bus with people 5 feet away from you for weeks on end that you go to dinner with and go to the gym with and hang out with. Jake, our merch guy, he's great, but I don't see him all the time. But I will know when I go home, I'm like, oh, I haven't seen Jake for a couple of days. Like there's that little branch out.
One thing I've really tried to do is give a realistic expectation as to what touring is like, and I want a good filter to it. And I have a lot of people that reach out that they want to be on tour, especially audio engineers. What is your advice to people that what the road is really like as opposed to what they think it's like?
I mean, now a lot of people coming up within the last 10 years that want to do it are seeing the more current version of, it's not the 80s anymore. It's not the 90s, times where it was wild and it was a party. I mean, now technology is changing so quick, you have to stay up on it. There's, NAB, there's NAMM, there's LPS, there's all these audio conventions and meetings happening. Networking is crucial. who you know on the road, who will back you up, who has a good resume for you, who will say good things for you. And I would always if you want to do it, do it. Like if it's a dream that you want to follow and you want to mix, go to a club, start working at a club, find touring guys or gals, put your name out there. And, if you're good enough and you really want to do it, the right person at the right time will come along.
Well, I think there's also a very real side to this. It's like, this isn't really for everybody.
No, that's kind of like that was the quick view. I mean, mental health is very real.
Yeah.
People think they want to do it until you're away from home for 8 weeks or 9 weeks, and maybe you don't see your person or your parents or your dog or whatever it is that you have at home. That can take a toll.
Yeah.
Obviously, there's a lot of vices on the road that people use in healthy and unhealthy manners. And there's just also personality. Like there's 25, 30 of us on this tour, 30 different personalities. Again, this is a very rare one. Everybody gets along really well on this. Everybody hangs out, which is cool. But I've been on tours where like the person in this bunk and that bunk don't talk to each other, but they have to see each other every morning when they wake up and work together. So you just have to be willing to accept different personalities and different thought process and just different mindsets. Or, like some people are more alpha than others. Some people are more driven, more introvert, more extrovert. Mm-hmm. You have to take all of that and kind of mold it into like an acceptance. And just whether you agree with it, and there's things you don't talk about on the road.
Yeah.
There's 3 big things you don't talk about on the road, on the bus at night. Religion is one of them. Politics, it can. Those are the 2 biggest, and it can go from there, but there's a place and time for everything. But if you want to do it, go on the road and do it. You get to see the world, you get to mix music, you meet great people. It's art driven, it's creative focused. It changed my life.
What's the coolest new trick you've learned recently?
The newest trick. I watched you ask this to Shelby the other day.
Yeah.
And he told he is a 6th member of that band, by the way.
He what?
I said he is the 6th member of that band.
100%.
I love that guy. Great engineer. I don't know that it's a new trick really that I've learned. Like we've started using guitar cabs and bass cabs again. So getting to pick out mics and make guitar cabs sound big and heavy and crunchy. Figuring out, like the trusty 57 sounds great on a Marshall cab. Running them in stereo. We have 2 cabs, 2 heads. Really working with Zach and balancing those out. I think understanding how his ear works and what he wants his guitar rig to sound like, and how my ear works and what I think a rock guitar sound should sound like, and sitting down and like in pre-pro, he and I would go back and forth, and he would sit out here and like move faders a little bit and be like, oh yeah, let's maybe we can put the mic over here, we can shift this over here. So I think not necessarily a new trick, but like working with the artist and really understanding what they want. I think so many times bands will come on stage, trust the engineer, which is a great thing to do. But may not always have the time spent into the audio side of it. Generally, it's like really production heavy. So, but no new like audio tricks currently.
Who's a band you'd pay to mix for?
Ooh, pay to mix for?
Mm-hmm.
Oh, 2, Deftones or Seven Dust.
Yeah, Seven Dust.
Oh yeah, it's been a dream band.
Yeah.
I just want to mix them one time. I've gotten calls to do it, but it comes with like the TM and some other work on the back end. And I was like, nope.
I thought your answer was going to be Lenny Kravitz for some reason.
I mean, I would. No, Deftones. And Deftones front of house engineer used to do AWOLNATION.
Oh, really?
Ben.
Yeah.
I believe it was Ben Wilcox,
yeah.
If I remember correctly. Great engineer. But yeah, Seven Dust. I'm going to mute everybody but Morgan. But obviously, I just want to go mix Morgan Rose playing drums for 45 minutes. No, that whole band rips. I'd love to mix that band. But
you're a drummer. As a drummer, what do you notice and what do you pay attention to when you're mixing drums?
Sure. A good drum sound, and that starts with up on stage. Our drum tech, Andy, is fantastic. It's a cool maple kit. He down-tunes the snare, so got that fat, like rock snare. The toms aren't covered in attack. The floor tom doesn't wobble. It sounds like a rock floor tom. And not over-processing. A snare drum can hit a left and right, hit a compressor, got a distressor down here, into a group, nice reverb on there, you get a big rock snare. You don't have to overthink it. So me, I think as a drummer, and a lot of audio engineers are drummers, I'm coming to find out. It's the most important instrument on stage. Just approaching the sound that you want the right way. You don't have to have a million things on it or a million plugins on it or no plugins on it. Do what you need to do to make it sound like it should sound for the band.
Yeah.
It can be very simple or it can be very complicated.
What's the most common mistake you see new engineers making?
Mixing too loud, thinking that louder is better. I used to be the same way. Never tried to mix in a painful manner, but I was just like, yeah, like heavy and loud is cool. But then, I got to know one of my favorite engineers, Eddie Mapp, probably one of the best on the planet, who mixes Pantera. And I saw him at a festival at like 99, and I was just DB, not the year 1999. I was like 7. It was like right under 100 or at 100, and I was just floored with how good it was. And I was like, he's like, number one, phase, everything in phase. Think about your mic placement, your overheads to your snare. Listen to that. I remember he was on a Papa Roach tour years ago, and I was just starting to mix. Same thing, Papa Roach is at like 97, 98 dB in an amphitheater, and it was just face melting in a great way. And I was like, how do you do that? And he's like, it's not volume, it's where you place everything in the mix. And it's your EQ and in your phase. And he's like, and the more I've thought about that, even like when we were doing sound check today, I like to sit at like 96, 97 with AWOL, because I still also have to get a vocal in there. So if your mix is slamming, and you have no vocal check or nothing there, like where's that gonna go? And I think you can be more artistic with some less volume. You can really sit and fine tune like a nice heavy rock snare. Even if you have some chimes and he's got some cowbells and stuff, you can place that somewhere and have it sit really well and not be buried by, over-shearing loud bass and ripping guitars that don't need to be ripping. They need to be present.
For high energy bands that may be necessarily a wall of sound, what's your trick to being able to create space for everything and not sound like a wall of sound?
Sure. I mean, you can only do so much. So, I mean, if you're talking like side fills on stun, like, like Motorhead style, and 120 dB of guitar cabs and bass cabs.
Side fills on stun.
I think that's probably pretty accurate. I mean, you have to work with your monitor engineer, to like, hey man, your side fills are way too much. Can you help me out this? Like, can you come down 5 dB and I'll make it up out here? Will that help you? And so it's probably hard to see like right over here. So where Zach's rig is, I have his cabs turned 90 degrees, shooting away from the crowd.
Oh.
See how that's sideways? Yeah. That's because when we first started the tour, he plays the JCM 800 or his other Marshall head and that Silver Jubilee on 10. As loud as he'll possibly go for the saturation, and that's his tone, and he plays with feedback. Well, we got Instagram hits from people that were in the front row that could only hear 112 dB of guitar shooting in their face. And then I talked to the boss, and he was like, how do we fix this? And I was like, well, I don't want to change the guitar tone because that's his tone that he likes. That's not fair to him. I don't want to mix it louder because I think we're already at a great volume, and that's not fair to people in the stands. This doesn't need to be 105. I was like, well, what if we turn the cab sideways? He gets his tone, his volume. It helps out the front row. It helps me out, and everybody kind of wins. And they were like, okay, cool, we can do that. But I went right to the boss with that, and I was like, here's how I would like to address it. How do you feel about it? And I even brought him down to the front row that day and had him play. And I was like, this is how loud it was. And it's just about getting your artist respect and them trusting you and being like, oh yeah, you are paying attention, or you do have an ear, or you are thinking about more than just this. You're thinking about all the people are the reason we have this job.
Who are some of the engineers you look up to?
Eddie Mapp, Bruce Ritter, Chad Olick, Pooch, of course. I've only met him once, but I've gotten to watch his videos. And now there's so many good young engineers.
Yeah.
I mean, Logan is great. He's got one of my favorite drum sounds, and I'm really picky about drum sounds. So I'd say, Logan's got, and his mix is great. Shelby is wonderful. Matt with Bad Omens is killer. Ashton, there's a ton of great engineers that I met coming in and coming up at the same time. And it's really cool. Like, we have a group chat with like 30 or 40 of us in there, and it's just everybody's like, here's a job, or here's a gig, or here's an idea, here's a new mic. And it's just it's a cool community to be a part of. Like, it's everybody from 30, 40 years ago to like in the last 5.
Wow. What do you think separates the goods from the greats?
I think the greats listen to other people. They have mentors. They read. They learn. They try to take something away every show. I tried even at the end of the night, like take a quick moment to think, and I'm like, what did I like tonight? For example, last night in Tampa, the vocals, I was super happy with the vocal mix last night. There's energy in the room. Aaron had full energy. He came out just on stun. The effects set really well. I didn't really have to chase the vocal much the entire night. And I was like, I liked my approach tonight. I did a little bit of different EQ, and I was like, I'm going to start with that tonight. I just lost the rest of that whole sentence I was going to say. It was really important, I thought. What was the question again?
What do you feel like separate?
Oh, the goods and the greats.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Asked that.
Putting time into it, researching, learning, reading, use YouTube. There was another engineer, Frank Scambolone, one of my favorites. On this tour, I was working on a vocal trick, and I called him, and I'm like, hey, what's your approach to doing like this delay vocal thing? And he's like, well, I run it this way, then I split it here, and I do it here. And I was like, oh, I would never have thought of that. So I applied it here, and now that's still the same delay trick that I use for Aaron. So I'm never afraid to call anybody and ask a question. Like, there's no such thing as a dumb question. I would rather ask something that may be perceived as that than make a mistake live when it could have been prevented.
What is something you learned that revolutionized the way you mix?
Revolutionize. Wow, what a word. It always starts, maybe not revolutionize, it starts with the source. It is so important. Like right now, like I can mute this whole desk and I want to go up there and see what that's going to sound like first before I come out here. I used to be out here and I used to just like EQ the crap out of everything. And I'm like, oh, man, that just sounds worse. It didn't help. And then I'm like, oh wait, well, if I go up there and just tune that snare a little bit, or let's try a condenser on this, or let's try this different mic, or like we do different EQ on your bass settings. And I'm like, now that it's good up there, then I do the work out here. But I think, trying to chase some problems here first without thinking about the source.
I think it's hard for some people that are especially new with some bands that don't have that rapport with them yet to be able to say, hey, let's change that. How do you feel that out of like the right time to be able to approach an artist and ask them
I think somebody actually just asked me this yesterday, similar question, at the venue in Tampa. If you're being paid by the boss or bosses up there, they're already paying you because they trust you. So once you're on their payroll and they're paying you to amplify what they're doing up there, you've already built that trust. So if I'm going up, and in my opinion, I'm like, hey, your kick drum sounds kind of weird. Not bad weird, but I think we can make it better. Do you mind if I just do a couple things? And it's really only to help the mix out front. I don't know of any band that's going to be like, how dare you say that? They may make things tuned a certain way, and that's when you can work with the tech on whatever instrument it is. But, generally, like whoever the boss is, they're paying you, you've established the trust, and you're only trying to make it better. Now, it depends on your attitude you go into it with. If you're just like, dude, your guitar sucks, I'm like, pretty reasonable, they're probably not going to be happy.
Yeah.
But if you're like, hey, I'm noticing it seems a little shrilly out front, do you mind if we change a couple things on the EQ to make it a heavier rock tone?
Yeah.
And then they're going to be like, oh, yeah, sure, thank you. It's like you have to
word
your
approach.
It. Yeah, absolutely. But yeah, I think as soon as you're paid, you have that ability to have an honest conversation.
I like that. We're going to go jump and we're going to show walk through the console a little bit, his layout with it, maybe some outboards. So this is going to be for if you're a YouTube member or your Patreon subscriber, this is going to be for you guys. Also want to support. We've got some merch. I got some failed musician t-shirts. So please support this. Before we go to that, if people want to follow you and follow your career, where can they follow you at?
Yes. Facebook, Instagram. That's it. At Brian Hardaswick.
At Brian Hardaswick.
Yeah.
Or an AWOLNATION show.
AWOLNATION. We have 5 weeks left of shows. If anybody wants to come see a show, anybody that's an audio head, let me know. I'd be happy to put you on a guest list and come see a show.